Now it has been a while since I made the dark side tutorial, hasn't it? Let's change that today. This morning I did some cool sound design experimentation and I came up with this synth sound here. As you can hear, there's some really cool atonal stuff going on here, as well as some nice pitching effect that sometimes come in and sometimes doesn't. And I want to show you how to do that. So this started off, as I said, as a bit of experimentation, and I was inspired by a different tutorial that I saw that talked about, if you go in here, the ability to turn up the range here of the detuning. As you can see, the normal detuning amount is 2 semitones, so you'll go up 1 semitone and down 1 semitone. But in this case, we're going up 2 octaves as well as down 2 octaves. And you can see we're using 16 voices and we're using the maximum detune here. But you might say, well, this graph is looking a little bit strange. And that's because we're also using this different mode here. Again, this is the default setting, but here you can see we're using this random mode here. Now these two things are key to the sound, so I just opened up a new Serum so that I can show you. Let's start off by looking at normal detune at the maximum. I just have sine waves here. And what we should see is all of these sine waves kind of hung up together in the frequency spectrum. Now let's see what happens if we increase this amount here. You get some very cool atonal stuff. Now for me, this wasn't chaotic enough, and that's where the different modes come in. As you can see, the linear mode just spreads them out over the spectrum. But you can play with the other ones as well. And then we have the random, which just randomly assigns all 16 voices to different pitches within the range that you have set. Now you can see for the original patch, I decided to go with the analog sign just because that gives a little bit more character. If we look into it, you can see it has a few extra harmonic content in here than just the pure sine wave. You can also see that I did some experimentation with FM, but obviously the oscillator B is turned off, so we're not actually using that. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm just using the amp modulation to make a really short pluck here. We don't have any effects after that. The only other thing that we're using is the pitch band range, and you can see that the pitch is constantly changing here. This is actually achieved through an external modulation. The reason why I decided to do it externally like this through the pitch modulation is 1, it's a little bit cleaner in my opinion, and 2, it allows me to use a setup like this, where we have a random LFO, and this is just modulating the pitch band. And you can see that we're then modulating the depth of that LFO. This is what causes the sound to sometimes sound like it's not pitching at all, and in other times sounds like it's very heavily pitching up and down. If you don't have this and you'll set the depth always to a high amount, you'll always get that pitching effect. And if you set it to a very low amount or to 0, you will not get that pitching effect. And obviously with the modulation, we're morphing between them. After that, you have your standard kind of processing. We have an OTT, we have an EQ to remove the low frequencies, we have a saturation, and then finally a delay, and that's the whole sound. So again, this is going to be a little bit of a shorter video. I know the last few videos have been fairly short and maybe have been subjects that aren't really that interesting. Usually what I like to do is every once in a while have like a very big video or something like that, something very, very interesting, something very researched or something like that. But I'm in the middle of transitioning to a new apartment, and I'm also taking a week off to go back to my family and spend some time with them as well. This also gives me a lot of time to work on the 3rd installment of the Psytrance for Beginners tutorial, where I'm going to be talking about kick and bass. Now obviously there's a lot to talk about with kick and bass, and I want this video that I'm making now to replace my ultimate guide for kick and bass. So you can imagine that scripting something like that takes a lot of time. With that being said, I obviously still hope that you enjoy this content and that you learn something from it. If you do, make sure to leave a like and make sure that you're subscribed if you haven't. Also, if you want to support me financially, check out my Gumroad to buy my products or my Patreon to support me directly. But that's going to be the video. I hope you enjoyed and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.